You're welcome back. Now on AM Talk today, we're very honored to have him. Dr. Clement Apak is the MP for Bulsa South. He's a deputy ranking member on the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education. And boy, do we have a lot to discuss. Dr. Apak, how nice to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Let me say good morning to viewers, because I know the people of Bulsa South are watching. So they're also going to have to learn a few bully words. When I agree to Soluk, then you respond Solu Nalong.
Okay, let's try it.
Solua.
Solu Nalong.
Very well.
Wow.
You've done well. You are doing much better than Roland.
I am ready to take a bully wife.
And we have some very beautiful daughters.
You have prepared me. We thank God.
Yes, yes. Well, polygamy is duly acceptable where I come from. So if you're already married, you can make room for another.
That will not be a problem. But it's very nice to see you.
Sure,
Thank you so much for making the time. And we've got quite a bit to discuss, you know. Today I thought we would spend some time talking a little bit about the progress of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Also, Helen Wan bursts onto the scene of Ghana-China relations with 4 containers full of rosewood timber, which she's not supposed to have in her possession according to our laws. Then perhaps we'll spend a bit of time on the Meet the Press yesterday, where Alan Chermanting, Minister for Trade, addressed some issues of interest. I think that should keep us busy, but I'll take some preliminary thoughts from you on what the President talked about in his visit up north. He said that his primary competitor claimed in the run-up to the election that he had constructed God knows how many roads all over the place, especially in the 3 regions to the north. And well, in his experience, that is really not the case, and that he's traveled across these regions and all of these roads. In fact, na roads know he. Thoughts?
Well, Kojo, let me say good morning again to your good self and to viewers. And to say that you know, we are in the fasting season, and so I must at least associate with Muslim brothers and sisters. I have a very robust Zongo community, and I know the chief imam of Umbisi and my Zongo caucus coordinator, and the rest of the guys there are, you know, cleansing themselves, so to speak. And I think we all benefit. Because religious rituals and obligations definitely draw us closer to God, and we all benefit. In light of that, I think that at this time too, it's only proper that we are fair, that we don't make statements that clearly cannot be proven. You know very well that I've had the chance of working for the former president and the flag bearer of the NDC. And so I understand a few things that persons who didn't have the chance to work in such close proximity perhaps will not be able to appreciate. One thing I can say for a fact, and I think that this is something that can be verified, that President John Dramani Mahama, former President John Dramani Mahama, never said anywhere that he had constructed all the roads in Ghana. It is impossible. But everyone knows that under his reign as president, under the NDC, conscious efforts were made to invest massively in fiscal infrastructure. And of course, it is not only confined to roads. We speak about the expansions of the ports, the Takoradi Port, the Tema Port, which is still quite ongoing, and we are beginning to even hear the fact that larger ships can berth at our ports because of some of these work.
It will be the biggest in Africa.
Exactly, that we had initiated. Then we look at the road sector. Work was going on. I can even give you specific examples where I come from, because the president has made his comment within the context of visiting the northern part of this country. You know, the road from Navrongo, Chuchuluga, Sandema, through Bedemama constituency to Fumbisi, and then to Riesi, to link up to Yareba. was ongoing. Work was ongoing. But work was stopped when we lost power, like many others. And this government had made the case that they wanted to audit contracts that were awarded during our time. They did that audit. And today, as we speak, we are yet to hear them hold anyone accountable for any wrongdoing.
But could it be as a result of that audit that the president is now saying that he can't see, you know, what the former president was talking about?
No, but road construction, this is not something that is hidden. It is physical. When work is being done on a road, it is something that is visual, is present, and you can see it.
Let's hear exactly how the president put it, and then perhaps that will inform our comment on it. So here's the president speaking yesterday, I believe. Come on, volume.
I was told by my principal competitor that he had done all the roads in the country, that he had been responsible for unprecedented infrastructural development. And yet, everywhere I go, I don't think there's been one traditional palace which I've entered in or traditional authority that has sought to talk to me, which have not raised the issue of roads in their area as a principal concern. So we have to find out in these matters. It's not good for us politicians to be misleading the people. If you have not done something, don't claim it. Don't write in it. Don't write in your book. Don't make pronouncements on it. The people themselves could tell the truth of what's going on. When I had the temerity as an opposition leader to question the statement, I was met with the response that I was asleep when I was driving through the country. I'm used to insults and whatever comments are made on me. It's not today that I'll let those things get under my skin. But I think it's important that we, the political leaders of this country, exercise some sense of responsibility when we're making these claims. The Laura Tumu Hen Road is not only in the budget, but it is part of the scheme of activities that the Ministry of Road is going to roll out. So I want very much you to recognize that as things that are going to be done. I'm particularly keen that those roads that hit our borders, the trunk roads that hit our borders and that go there, be very much amongst the priorities, because they have everything to do with opening up the country for trade with our and as you know, the trade with the Burkina Faso in particular has heightened considerably with a lot of foodstuffs moving there from Ghana. So it makes sense for us to make sure that this.
Yeah, that was the president there, talking about how road construction has been a major challenge. So I guess in what he's saying is that if really the NDC had made such a massive contribution to roads and infrastructure, he shouldn't be hearing demands and requests for roads everywhere he goes in the country. But it makes him wonder, where is all this infrastructure that you claim to have done?
Well, I think that I will be charitable to the president, truly, because listening to him, he has been most unfair to his predecessor and principal competitor. There was anywhere that President Mahama ever said that he has done all the roads. The president said he claimed he had done all the roads. But we're talking about English and semantics here. But the fact still remains that a lot of work was done. More work needs to be done. And that work was ongoing. And so if you visit traditional leaders in their palaces and they make requests that they want roads to be done, does not presuppose or negate the fact that during our tenure in office, a lot of work was done in the area of infrastructure. In other case, well, the president has had the benefit of being president for 2 years now. He should tell us what roads he has constructed. since he now agrees that a lot more was left undone. What has he done?
Well,
so this is a debate that we can have. But
fair enough.
I don't think that the president fairly represented the facts on the ground. And he rather made a much more sweeping statement attributing it to President Mahama when Mahama never said that anywhere.
Let me see if I can make a segue from that into our next discussion. And of course, if you ask what has the current president done in the past 2 years in terms of road construction, their biggest push in that direction is through the Sino-Hydro deal.
Yes.
We heard from the senior minister about how the Sino-Hydro deal has aspects unknown, unseen, which, by his account, led to the deportation of a person who ought to have faced justice, a Chinese national who was exploiting our resources. Well, guess what? They say like London buses, they arrive in twos. So Helen Huang,
another Huang,
has burst onto the scene. She was arrested a few days ago in Tamale, in a suburb on the outskirts of Tamale. She's believed to have been transporting this rosewood from the Upper West, I think, region of the country. She went through 2 police checkpoints without being stopped, and at the 3rd, she was stopped. She was traveling with 2 massive trucks. Each one had 2 big containers filled. There was no breathing space, filled with rosewood timber. So 4 containers, she was traveling with it, wasn't stopped at 2 checkpoints, stopped at the 3rd, and she's been arrested. She's also making some allegations that the only reason why she ended up arrested was because they asked her for a bribe and she refused to pay. I don't know whether she's suggesting that that means she has integrity, where she's been caught with 4 containers of an illegal resource.
To say the least, it is worrisome. It is worrisome because of where this endangered type of timber is. Because this is a particular tree species that by and large is confined to the savanna ecotone, so to speak. And we also know the challenges that we are facing within the context of climate change. And so when you have a tree species that takes anywhere between 50 to 100 years to mature, you know, a tree species that clearly has a very high global economic value, because most of the high-end, you know, furniture that is produced in the European metropolis and even now Asian metropolis, piano keys, violins, the butts of guns, and what have you. These are made from rare tree species like the rosewood. And so that then gives it the economic value. But we must always weigh that vis-a-vis our own survival. Because I come from a part of the country where this menace, we are beginning to see its dire consequences. It's beginning to affect rainfall patterns, soil fertility, animal husbandry, the levels of the water table. Because once you clear the land of the covering vegetation, it has implications, even for erosion. And yet, in spite of this now, the second ban under this government, it is still continuing. You know, I had reasonable cause to do a statement on the floor of Parliament, which then, you know, empowered, if you like, it was acceptable enough for the Speaker to have referred it to the Subcommittee on Lands and Forestry. The committee did a field trip to visit my constituency, among others, to do fact-finding, came and did a report. It was on the basis of that report, which was adopted by the House unanimously, that the minister, the current Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, announced a reinforced ban. The earlier ban was a ban on the harvesting and export of rosewood. The reinforced ban, as per the minister's, you know, meet the press, you know, encounter, was that it was now going to include the harvesting, the transportation, the conveyance, and then the export. And I had argued that when you speak like this, it sounds good to the ear. But what practical measures are you putting in place to ensure that this ban is indeed effective? Because the previous ban, I had a lot of evidence to show that was not effective. In fact, I can tell you that even before this arrest, I received several reports that this menace was still unfolding. There was even a video that I saw, which I believe should be in the possession of government and the security agencies in the now Savannah region area around the environs of Damango. A whole camp manned by Chinese nationals with several hundreds of logs of rosewood. This was even after the ban had been reinforced. And I had even received pictures and videos of freshly cut logs from different parts of the country. And then now we get to hear that even these foreigners, particularly the Chinese, feel so emboldened not only to engage in an activity that has been prescribed by our law, and that prescription has been reinforced by a ministerial announcement, but now even have, the courage to lead vehicles conveying what essentially is contraband goods.
And she claimed ownership of it.
Exactly my point. And that is why I see that we haven't done much, or whatever we claim to be doing is not working. Because she shouldn't even in the first place have had an iota of courage to engage in this enterprise. But you see, she had the boldness to do this because she knows that she can get away with it. And it is likely because she has gotten away with it several more times. And this time around, as she claims, the only reason why she was apprehended was because she failed to bribe the police. 200 cedis they wanted per container, and she refused. And you know that one 20-foot container of rosewood on the global market goes for more than $20,000.
Wow.
Yes.
That's some very valuable
I tell you
wood.
the truth. Your own network did a documentary on it, and I have also cross-checked. So what this means is that the ban on the illegal logging and export of rosewood is not effective. We are not enforcing it. The persons who are mandated to ensure that we protect this endangered wood species, and for that matter, our Savannah ecological zone, are not working. Do you mean to tell me that this woman just came from nowhere, China, or even if she has been domiciled in Ghana for who knows how long, she just woke up, just went to this part of the country? There was no police, no DC, no forestry officer, no forestry guards. She got people from outer space, perhaps ET and other Martians, to come and cut all of these logs. These Martians loaded the logs into the containers, drove the cars, and then suddenly she got apprehended
after going through 2 checkpoints.
Please. You see, let's be serious as a nation and as a people. If we do not take the initiative to do what is right because we know it is going to be in our interest and in the interest of generations to come, foreigners would exploit us and take advantage of our greed. Because this should not be happening at this time, especially on the back of the earlier story that you told. But then again, maybe those who have the power to crack the ship are looking the other way because she's from China. Perhaps because we know that we are relying on them to finance our infrastructure. They also now feel emboldened to do whatever they want because they can get away with it.
Let's talk about that aspect of this for a moment. So the senior minister made this point about how jailing Aisha Juan will not bring any economic benefit, and put it in the context of the Sino-Hydro deal and the fact that there are many things about that deal that we don't know. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources then came along in a press statement and said, oh, we actually deport Chinese all the time. We've deported hundreds of them. Aisha Juan is just another Chinese person who got deported rather than prosecuted. So At this point, with this woman, Helen Wan, should we simply ask government to give us her deportation date? Or can we realistically expect this woman to be charged, tried, and convicted?
I hate to burst your bubble, but I must agree with you, because so far, there is nothing to show that as a nation and the government that we have is willing to take the needed action so that that can serve as a deterrent to others who may be hiding in the shadows or still in the wings, hoping to also, engage in practices that are inimical to our well-being. But you see, I am even a lot more skeptical, because in the time that this government first announced the first ban on the illegal harvesting and export of rosewood, which was in, I believe it was February of 2017. And I've been following this issue, everyone knows, on the floor of Parliament, everywhere. So I know what goes on. Since then, I know that in excess of 300 containers, the last time I filed a question, which was responded to by the Deputy Minister for Lands and Forestry, the Honorable Benito Owusu.
Yeah.
He had indicated that about 366 containers of rosewood were impounded. So then I asked a follow-up question. What have you done to those who you caught
with these over 300 containers?
Yes, what have you done to them? What has happened to the drivers who drove those cars? Who owns those companies? And what have you done to the impounded logs? Has anyone been tried and prosecuted? Has anyone been put to jail? He said no. Yes, I tell you the truth. Not even one single soul,
what was the
whether
reason?
Local or foreign,
What was the reason?
has been made to face the rigors of the laws of this land for engaging in an act that we all agree is illegal. So you ask yourself, I mean, are we serious? So if 366 containers were impounded and not even a single soul has been made to stand trial, do you honestly think that it is 4 containers that is going to lead to some prosecution? But now the onus lies on government and the minister to prove you and I, who have become perpetual skeptics because of the inertia of inaction, that at least the wind of change is blowing in as far as holding persons who do wrong accountable is concerned. Other than that, I agree with you, because she is from China. Now we know that Chinese citizens are just to be deported, regardless of the level of crime that they commit against us. And so if one can wage such an assault against our environment within the context of illegal small-scale mining, and we just quietly deport her, I mean, the name is quite similar. I mean, I see the newspaper caption, Aisha's sister. Let's see what is going to happen to Aisha's sister.
And I like the way you say, if one can wage a war, because she is called Helen Wan.
Yes. So one is waging a war. Oh. And this harvesting of rosewood is also a war against the environment. I just gave you a short list of the effects. And you see, let me quickly add one other factor to the implications of destroying the rosewood species. It's not just about the age, the fact that it takes anywhere between 30 to 100 years to mature. It is also the tree species that traditionally the armyworms have fed on. And one of the reasons why we are seeing an upsurge of the worms attacking crops, plants, and other species that traditionally those worms never fed on to survive is because of the depletion of the rosewood species. So we are actually creating a mess for ourselves, and we are the ones who are going to suffer.
When you asked the Deputy Minister whether any arrests had been made in relation to the 300 or so containers that had been seized, and he said no. Did he give a reason why nobody had been arrested or prosecuted?
Well, what he said was that they usually would detain the vehicles used for about 2 or 3 months, and that they would fine the drivers and the owners of the company. I argue that was not a deterrent. I mean, that is not how you punish people who do wrong.
When they instituted the ban, did it come with a sanction for those who violate it?
Well, in the ban itself, it didn't say, but we know for a fact that when you engage in an act that is illegal, you are supposed to be held accountable. And I think that it's proper that people understand that under the law, there is actually a law, an act of parliament that governs, the timber industry and what types of species can be harvested when and how. Rosewood is actually identified specifically as an endangered species. And the whole of the northern part of this country is considered ecologically precarious. And therefore, no one should ever even be given a permit to harvest. But there was a caveat in the act that said that the Commissioner for Forestry could grant a salvage permit. But that salvage permit is only to be granted where the economical viable tree species like rosewood is in an area or an enclave designated for some type of development.
Right.
Say the establishment of a new settlement or the construction of a road.
Right.
In which case the commissioner can then say, you take the permit and go and salvage these trees because they have economic value.
Right.
But that has then been used as a conduit to perpetrate fraud. Because permits have been issued to companies, and I've seen some, your own Joy. And then to transport. So there's a whole system, there's a whole cabal. It is like a mafia in place, not that different from the issue of Galamsey, where even some state actors and public officials have been compromised. If not, this should not be happening.
Or even the issue of the close season with fish. Because again, I don't know if it's something you followed in Parliament, but the government has just announced a closed season from 15th of May to 15th of June, during which the canoes and the inshore fishermen are not allowed to go to sea. And this has become necessary because over the years we have depleted our stock of small pelagics, which is the fish you can catch inshore. Depleted. Now fishermen go out and come with nothing. There hasn't been a bumper harvest in over a decade. So it's a precarious situation. The scientists have warned that by 2020 we would have run out, not of just one species, but of an entire ecological system of fish. Okay. Now, finally, the government have issued a closed season, something which shocks me because they seem to be negotiating with science, saying that, oh, we'll do it in May, even though the scientists say do it in August, otherwise you won't have any effect because the fish spawn in August. Any other time, you're wasting your time. They're doing it in May because that's what the fishermen are willing to do. Let's have a quick look at that particular story. And then I want to connect it to the depletion of our resources and the Chinese once again.
Very important. Very important.
Some agitated fishermen at Jamestown protesting government's planned ban on fishing next week. It's a Tuesday morning at Jamestown Beach here in Accra, the day nobody goes out to sea. Canoes carved out of giant trees line the shore. Other canoes are on the water as they stay anchored close by. This is a place where hundreds of local fishermen make a living. Peter Nikwe Amwa has been a fisherman for years. He tells me there's no alternative source of income when the ban is enforced next week. Peter says fishermen at Jamestown have decided to defy the ban and go out to sea.
The government hasn't made any arrangements for other sources of livelihood for us during the closed season, and this will greatly affect us. How are we going to take care of our families? We want the government to reconsider its decision on this subject. The government says anyone who will go fishing during the period will be arrested. In fact, we'll defy this directive, so they arrest all of us.
Kojo Kakraba says his livelihood depends fully on fishing. He tells me he can't survive a week without going to sea and will defy government's directive.
If government implements the ban, we will really suffer. All fishermen at this time are working extremely hard to take care of their families. And their children at school. If I don't go fishing, how will I take care of them? We have never agreed with the government on this close season issue. I can't survive a day without going to the sea. I don't know what will happen to me if I stay at home a whole month without fishing.
Kwabena Bentum is also a fisherman here. He says dealing with the country's depleting fish stock will require best fishing practices and not through the observation of closed season.
The fishing trawlers are also to blame for the depleting fish stock. Some fishermen in the country use light and small nets, which mostly catch the small pelagics. Strict adherence to best fishing practices will solve the problem.
Abla Olivia and Akosia Emefa operate local eateries at the Jamestown beach. They both sell food to fishermen, fishmongers, and people involved in fishing activities here. They are both of a view that the closed season will bring hardship and have an adverse effect on the business, since their customers.
Yeah, so fishermen there complaining that even the May closed season is inconvenient for them because, they have to make a living. It seems there is a missing link here. Either there's a missing link in communication, or the government is simply not putting its foot down to protect endangered species, just like the rosewood.
Sure, Koyo.
Now, I must also do the Chinese connection before we delve into the conversation. You see, the trawlers who are only permitted to fish in the deep sea very often violate this law and fish inshore. In fact, there has been analysis of their product. When they catch the fish, they freeze it into cakes. And the fisheries ministry has analyzed their product. This is according to the minister. They've analyzed the product and found that over 50% of it is inshore fish, small pelagics, which means the trawlers are clearly breaking the law.
That's right.
Now, in spite of this, they haven't been prosecuted. They continue to fish. And over 90% of them are controlled. I won't say owned because the fisheries ministry denies, but they are controlled by the Chinese. Fisheries ministry says the Chinese take them on hire purchase to go and fish for them. They take the trawlers on hire purchase to go and fish for them, but the trawlers are owned by Ghanaians. Either way, it's the Chinese doing it.
Kojo. You see, it's very disheartening, as you just described, that we have a clear violation of our laws. There are standards, there are expectations, and you expect that sanctions will be meted out even when those standards are not upheld or somebody acts in ways that he or she should not. It looks as though from your narration, our Ministry of Fisheries is actually a Chinese apologist. Now, if you have found that a reasonable percentage of their catch is from within a boundary that they are not supposed to venture into, what you have to do is to crack the whip. You don't try to explain or justify wrongdoing. That is not your responsibility. But this is where some of us have come to believe that indeed there are people in this country, public civil servants, even some politicians. But I would even add, since we are looking at the issue of resources and how our resources are being depleted and the foreign influences, even some traditional rulers, men of God, who are working against the interests of the nation and of the people. Because I fail to understand why we pay people to prevent these things from happening. We see that they are happening. Not only do those who are perpetrating these crimes against us walking away free, but those whose responsibility it is to hold them accountable are also allowed to walk free. So by and large, it's become like an animal farm situation. You know, if you have the wherewithal, the right networks, the right connections, the ability to influence, whether in monetary terms or some big political influence, if you come from a country like China, where, you know, your nation needs some resources from, you can flout the laws and don't walk away free. But that is not how you build a nation. And that is why it's very disappointing. But action needs to be taken. The ministry has to be up and doing. Within the context of our own fishermen, that is more of, if you like, a conflict between science and tradition. The two are not mutually exclusive. I think what needs to happen, and I'm offering this free advice because given my background as an anthropologist, I know the dynamics of human society, and I know sometimes there can be clashes between modernity and tradition. If the space is created for the scientists to engage the fishermen, to properly explain to them that at the end of the day, these measures being introduced or proposed is going to inure to your benefit, because a lack of action is going to lead to a complete depletion of the fish stock. I think they can find a reasonable compromise. So I think that, as you said earlier, there is a missing link, because the fishermen, they are not unreasonable. They have relied on the sea for who knows how long, and they wouldn't want not to have their source of livelihood. So we have to find a way to bring science and tradition together for the common good. But I think that one of the areas that I see that we are lacking, and as far as this is concerned, is that there isn't a lot more education going on in terms of conveying the scientific findings and knowledge to the people.
Doc, let me
and that failure may be as a result of the lack of action by the ministry, because the ministry is supposed to be the interface.
Doc, let me break your heart further.
I really hope not.
Because
we are dealing with some very heavy issues this morning.
Because that engagement, which is a brilliant suggestion, has been going on. So the scientists, they have a technical advisory group. They have been brought in contact with the fishermen. They have explained the situation to the fishermen in February. And an agreement was made that there will be a closed season in August. As a result of that engagement with the leaders of the fishing communities, they agreed that, okay, well, look, this is life and death. We need to do this, otherwise our livelihood will disappear.
So at least they understood why the scientists
the understanding had proposed.
Okay, very well.
Following that, there was an announcement made by an employee of the fisheries ministry that, well, the closed season will now be done in May. So the scientists again were at another meeting.
Wait, let me get you right. So as a result of the dialogue between the scientists and the fisher folk, they agreed.
Yes.
For August.
That's right. But
which should have been,
it should have been
okay.
Fine. But we don't know what happened, whether some groups of fishermen went back to the politicians and struck some other deal. But May suddenly was announced. The scientists again engaged the fisher folk. And this time around, they brought slides, illustrations to explain the situation, what's going on. The reason why the water has to be a certain temperature before spawning can happen. Right. And that temperature will not be present until the month of August, perhaps July to September generally, but August particularly. They took their time to explain this, and in fact, the leaders of the fisher folks said to the scientists that if we had known this, we would not have agreed to the May dates. Following that, the scientists then wrote a letter to the ministry. And by the way, I'm telling you all this because I interviewed the chairman of that scientific technical group yesterday on this platform.
Very well.
On this network. and he told me all this, that they wrote a letter to the ministry saying, we have met with the fishermen, we have explained it, they now get it, please change this to a date that would work for all. They are still going ahead with me.
Koyo, it's obvious that something is not right, because as I indicated earlier, the ministry should be the interface. And contrary to my earlier opinion, which you have now, you know, if you like, put to rest, that interaction between the fisher folk and the scientists has been ongoing. And that is good, it's refreshing. So if the scientists and the fisher folk understood and there was an agreement, why is it that the ministry seems to be dragging its feet and is now failing to do what is agreeable between science and tradition? What has the Ministry of Fisheries got to gain by not going along with what these two very important stakeholders have agreed upon? And I don't want to believe that there is some political influence or political interest, because it simply doesn't make sense to me. Well, if the fisher folk initially were resistant, and the scientists have been able to persuade them on the basis of evidence to agree, then it should be a done deal. It should be a walk in the park.
Well, something has clearly happened, Doc, and it needs to be proved. Speaking of probes, I'm enjoying my segues this morning.
I like that. We are flowing well. But that's because you are good. You know your job.
You're very kind, Doc. Speaking of probes, the Office of the Special Prosecutor has been established for over a year now. For most of that time, we heard from the Special Prosecutor himself lots and lots of challenges that he was facing, difficulties in actually getting the ball rolling, mainly revolving around resources. So in the last budget, 180 or 190?
I think it was about 180.
180
I remember.
million was assigned to his office. We still are not aware of any case that is in court that has been brought by Office of Special Prosecutor. So people have started to ask for a progress report. We're told in the Ghanaian Times that the board chair says that report will be forthcoming. But I wonder what your thoughts are on the general progress or lack of it at the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Well, first of all, I think it is only proper that I declare that the Special Prosecutor is a kinsman of mine. You know, I'm a Bulsa by tribe. He's a Bulsa as well. And I'm sure you've heard the popular phrase, the Bulsa way. So,
indeed.
I call him uncle, and I respect him for the work that he does and the responsibilities that he carries, because this is no easy assignment. But you see, we must be very candid and realistic. Setting up a new office obviously takes time. Getting the needed tools to be able to work with would take time to mobilize. And that is why when his budget request came to Parliament, of course, it was granted. And legitimately so. On the basis of the euphoria and how far the current government, in opposition and in government now, you know, raise the issue of this office, people naturally, Ghanaians generally, are eager to find out if it was worth it. And so the questions, if you like, the impatience, certainly are justified. Clearly, I don't work at the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I don't know how many cases he's investigating. I don't know how many prosecutors or investigators he has. I don't even know if the issue of the physical location of his office, which in itself was a problem some time ago, has been fully resolved. But like it or not, the Office of the Special Prosecutor exists. It has a board, and we have a Special Prosecutor in the person of Martin Hamidou.
And they have funding.
Ghanaians expect to see results. I believe he is somebody who is capable of speaking for himself. I mean, he's never been shy. about speaking or even writing. And so, sooner or later, we would have to hear what is going on. So if the board chair is saying that they are going to publish corruption cases soon, Ghanaians are very eager to find out what has been going on in the background. But you see, make no mistake that his work is not only confined to, quote unquote, digging up skeletons that perhaps were in some closets in the past, but it also includes the now. And so people are expecting, rightly so, that the many, and I say many because I'm a politician, and I say many because we have a basis of also determining what we believe is an act of corruption.
Kind of how the president said all the rules.
Yes, which I didn't agree with. The many allegations of corruption that have been leveled against appointees of the current government. People want to see what is going on. And they make mention of this issue of Movimpina and Zoop oil issue.
But have all these, you call them many,
action.
but have all these accusations not been addressed?
No, they have not. I mean, on what basis can we conclude that they have been addressed? I'll just give you one example.
So, so that Movimpina thing, there was a committee that was asked to look into it.
Yes, but at the same time, we are told that there was a presidential, I think, committee too that was set up to look at it.
Yes.
And it is on the basis of the report from that other committee that we now know that there was wrongdoing, to the extent that payment had not even been made by Movimpina on the several thousands of barrels of oil that were sold through Zoop oil. And people are still walking around. So when people hear this and many others, like the, the Metro Mass situation, I mean, should I go on? Because it's quite a number.
Well, if you have examples, I can't stop you from giving examples.
The Metro Mass situation that we heard of some, arrangements to try and circumvent the procurement processes and all of that. The people are asking, I mean, shouldn't these be low-hanging fruits that at least should be within the reach of the special prosecutor without strenuous effort? So, yes, the point I'm making is that there are high expectations. But we don't know what is going on if the man in charge does not tell us what the encumbrances are or the factors militating against his quick progress in as far as the expectations of Ghanaians are concerned. But it looks like the conversation and the dialogue, the pressure, so to speak, is mounting. Because on both sides of the political aisle, everyone wants to know what is going on. So the people want to know what is going on.
Before the money came to his office, there were lots of letters and no action. The money is in. The letters have stopped, but we still have no action. How do you explain the silence? I mean, what do you think is the reason? I mean, I ask you this not just because you're a politician who observes these things, but because, as you say, he's your kinsman. You probably know him better than most people do. What do you think accounts for the fact that now we don't even get the letters that were keeping us up to date on what his constraints are? Are his constraints now secret?
Well, it is difficult to tell, but you must remember that not long ago, the senior minister, whom we just mentioned within the context of the Chinese walking all over us and getting away with it, had made a comment to the effect that he was not up and doing, just to paraphrase, in as far as his work was concerned. And I believe very strongly that perhaps comments of this nature may have influenced the way he has also decided to pace himself. Because you must remember that the pressure is now coming from all angles, and legitimately so. And it is obvious that as a public servant, I know him very well. I mean, he believes that he's a public servant, and he's a public servant. I mean, that is the way it is. He expects that he'll be given the needed tools and the needed space to do work that would inure to the benefit of Ghanaians, and not political witch hunting. And sometimes those principles, if you like, can conflict with the interests of even the appointing authority. Because as I gave you these two examples, for example, I mean, the issue of the oil, the Bost contaminated oil issue, and the issue of the STC, these are matters that have to do with the current government. I mean, we don't know what is happening, but it is entirely possible that the special prosecutor is looking into this.
We also heard he was looking into some issues revolving around Mahama Yariga.
Very well. So whatever the case may be, all the issues that he's looking into, due to the thing that the current government would be singing, you know, Hosanna, knowing fully well that he's on their tail to try and expose what many of us believe to be a plethora of corrupt activities being perpetrated under them. So perhaps there is that conflict too there that we don't see. And you know, in times past, he even complained, as you said, when he was giving us updates, that government appointees
were refusing to
provide him with needed information. And so, but if he doesn't come out to let us know what the issues are, I'm not just speaking as a politician, but the citizens of the country will not know who to blame and where to apply pressure to ensure that he gets what he wants to be able to execute the mandate for which he has been given the responsibility to undertake.
Okay, well, an update is obviously needed and soon. Let me try my final segue. One other public servant with a mandate who has been giving an update is the Trade Minister, Mr. Alan Shermante.
Another segue.
Yeah. Alan Shermante was addressing the press yesterday, giving some information and updates on issues that fall under his purview. He talked about one district, one factory. Let's get a summary of what he said right now.
Clarification. This 79 is made up of 57 companies that are currently in operation, and then 22 projects that are under construction. So that's where you get the 79 from. But people don't realize that if you start counting projects that are already on the ground, then you are only short-changing yourself, because you may have others that are in the pipeline that you should also talk about, because it encourages people that there's something happening. So beyond this 79, we have projects that are ready to commence implementation before the end of the year. So one day out of the 181, 1D1F companies that were already in existence, that's 52. And those that are new, that's their new creation, that's 129. So that's how you get your total.
Try this one very briefly.
Right. Okay then. So that's what Alan Shermante had to say. And you know, I have
one district, one factory.
One factory. That's
yes,
right.
I was going to say one village, one dam, because I come from the north.
Indeed.
I'm still waiting to see where the dams will be constructed in my constituency of Boots South. 2 years down the line, but I'm here promised severally. I'm here to see one. But in any case, one district, one factory.
Yeah.
It is quite clear that government is having serious challenges in implementing this policy. If you were to go back to the source document, in this case the NPP manifesto, and you see the way this, you know, policy was couched versus what we are witnessing today, there are modifications, to say the least. I wouldn't say there is a departure, but there are modifications. The original impression was that this was going to be something that was going to be done by government or by the state. The recent narrative or rendition is that it is going to be private sector led with government facilitation. I listened to him for obvious reasons, because if indeed this policy can be implemented, the benefits are going to be enjoyed by all of us. I come from a part of the country where the only viable sources of employment are public sector and private small businesses. We don't have a factory in Butsa South. We don't have a factory in Butsa North. Although we have the resources, the shea nuts are there. We could have a shea nut processing factory. The rice from the Fumbisi, Bedemblisi valleys are there. We also have livestock where we can even have an abattoir to process and export not just beef, but even guinea fowl. But as we speak now,
fly away,
as we speak now, within the context of the minister saying that 181 have been established, and that I believe he said about 30% are operational. Then I ask myself, where are they? Where are they located? What are they producing? Obviously, we have now moved away from the original proposal that made us to think that these were factories that were going to be started from scratch, to where now existing factories can actually be latched upon and then used as examples of government fulfilling its one district, one factory policy. So if the minister is making this claim that 181 have been established and about 30% of those are currently functional, he should provide us with the evidence so that we can cross-check, verify, and confirm for ourselves. It's not sufficient to just tell us that this is what you have done without giving us the hard evidence to either, confirm or dismiss the claim that he's making. But you see, Kojo, there is something that is going on that I believe this is giving me the opportunity to highlight. The last time the minister came to Parliament to respond to a question on this same topic, he told us that no business promoter had shown an interest in establishing a factory in the Upper East region, where I come from. The whole region. If that has changed, I want to hear that. And if no business promoter has shown an interest to establish a factory in one of the poorest regions in the country, in a poor constituency like mine, then what is the entire purpose of this exercise?
So you feel that some parts of the country will end up being marginalized?
Exactly, and I can tell you that Butsa South is being marginalized. So is Upper East region. And so what is government doing to entice and enhance business promoters to go to very deprived constituencies like mine to set up factories? This is where the debate should be.
So what you're saying is that people need to be able to have something to point to in their communities to say, yes, this is evidence that this one district, one factory thing is working.
Certainly.
Well,
because if it doesn't exist, you can't say it does exist.
Indeed. Well, one part of the country where people are pointing to a monument, but not in a very positive way, is Kumasi, where the Otumfuo's recently unveiled statue, a massive, massive edifice, unfortunately, is drawing questions. They say the thing, and so and now you obviously have quite a bit of a background in this aspect of human encounter, and this is supposed to be a historic monument. Hundreds of years from now, people will point to this and say, "This is how the Otumfuo looked." I wonder if you share their sentiment that they may have missed the mark.
Well, first of all, we all know the good works that the Otumfuo has rendered, not only to his immediate subjects, but to us as a nation. And 20 years, sitting on the golden seat is no mean achievement. And to recognize him and to make sure that his position and role is marked with indelible ink, a series of events and activities were planned and have been executed. And I believe the statue that we are looking at on your screen is part of that effort. It's symbolic, but in anthropology, symbolism carries weight. And that is also the reason why observers feel disappointed, because they feel that the statue is not a proper representation of the king, and that there was a mistake.
What do you think? I mean, you've seen it.
I have seen it. I don't know the conversations that went on, perhaps the decision that went into choosing perhaps a particular photograph of him or a particular artistic drawing of him to serve as the raw material for the construction of the statue. So I wouldn't be able to tell. But from what I hear, this was done by professionals, colleagues at KNUST, and we know they have, you know, a very fine department in this area.
They've done other great work.
Yes. So that means that there was probably a miscommunication somewhere in terms of the source document that was to be used to produce the statue.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. The chiefs are reported to have inspected this work 7 separate times.
So then, yeah.
Before it was inaugurated.
So that something is not right. So if the chiefs had the opportunity to inspect this on 7 occasions before it was mounted and unveiled, how could it be possible that the wrong image of Otumfuo, as you know, was desired to be portrayed, has been put out and not the correct one?
Is there potential cost to this? You know,
of course, there's going to be a cost, as you have indicated. I mean, even the size of the statue itself is colossal, rightly so, because we are looking at a man who figuratively and even practically has the stature. So if modifications are to be done, obviously it is going to come at a cost. Some have suggested that perhaps to reduce cost and to ensure that this issue is rectified quickly, perhaps they could just look at, you know, the upper part of the
changing the upper part.
Yes, of the
there
statue.
are some who say there is a hidden opportunity here. If the statue had been done, you know, anatomically correctly, people would look at it and say, "Oh, AFA," and walk past. But now there's something to talk about. Maybe there's something to attract people to visit Kumasi. This might now become a stop on the tourist trail for those who visit the Garden City.
Well, that is a very interesting proposition, but we must remember that this is being done for the king. Right. And so if he believes, and I've not seen any formal statement coming from the Manshia Palace, but if he truly believes that this is not the image that he wanted to present,
right, then
there has to be modifications in spite of the potential touristic value of what is deemed to be the wrong, you know, identity presented to the people.
Well, we're yet to hear from the Otumfuo on that, but I've got to say a massive thank you to you, Dr.
Always a pleasure.
For sticking with me through all my tedious segues and helping us understand.
It is good practice for me as well. You know, we all practice and learn as we go along. Indeed. So, my name is Jam. When I say Jam, you say Jam.
Oh,
Jam.
Jam.
Oh, wow. Which means thank you.
That's right. Please line up 2 or 3 of the wives for me. I'll be there to pick them up. Thank you so much, Dr. Clement Apak, MP for Bulsa South and Deputy Ranking Member of the Select Committee in Parliament on education. That's right. Now, speaking of education, 3 girls who are being denied the opportunity to go through their education are the Takrady girls. They're still missing. It's still a nightmare for their families, and we still have a lot to talk about when we come back. Stay with us.